welcome to Hobby Nation, ladies and gentlemen. And for those of you who are new here, first of all, welcome to the channel. And secondly, just to introduce ourselves, we are a geek platform dedicated to promoting all things related to geek culture in the United Arab Emirates. And as part of our mission statement, of course, this is our first ever celebrity interview that we have done so, and the celebrity is none other than the amazing and legendary voice actor Paul St. Peter. Now, for those of you who don't know him, he is the voice behind some of your favorite characters, such as Kurama from Naruto, that is the Nine-Tailed Fox, Wormmon and Leomon from Digimon, and also Whammu from Jojo's Bizarre Adventures Battle Tendency, and of course his iconic role as Xemnas from Kingdom Hearts 3 and the other games as well. Now, we got a chance to have an amazing session with this amazing person. I hope you enjoy this interview, and do subscribe and like our channel.
They're very starstruck right now.
Oh
And,
yeah, I particularly.
exactly.
Yes, Ninetales. Oh my god. Okay, you have to flex this. I mean, every single time. Yeah, definitely.
I see the
All
hidden
right.
leaf. Now this is Naruto in Japanese.
Oh, that's nice.
amazing.
The same
And-
thing on both sleeves. I thought it would say Naruto Shippuden, but it doesn't.
Oh, okay. Even I was thinking the same thing.
You get one.
Yeah, I think I should get one. This is
All
yours.
right.
But all right,
Also, take it away.
all right, let's get started. First of all, we're gonna start off by the first ever question that probably everybody asks you. That what got you started into voice acting? Like, when did the acting bug bit you? I would say.
Well, the acting bug hit me when I was about 13 or 14 years old. I grew up in San Diego, and there was a guy across the street who was our quarterback when we played street football. And one day he talked about being in high school drama, and something about the way he talked about it really caught my attention. And I said, I have to try this. I was painfully shy as a kid. I would barely talk to anybody because my voice had changed and I started sounding kind of good, but I would get attention, but I didn't want the attention because I was so shy. But something got me on stage. I had to do it. And that's what I kind of knew then I had the bug. Now, getting into the voice side of it, I grew up as a stage actor. I trained as a stage actor.
Oh.
I sang 4 years in the San Diego Opera Chorus. For a guy who never took a voice lesson, I was doing some pretty good stuff. I came to Los Angeles, and when I was working on stage and some on camera here, other people noticed me and said, well, you got quite the voice. I had been studying accents and dialects, Shakespeare, poetry, all this other wonderful stuff as a stage actor. And when one of my fellow students in a workshop heard me say something, he had just said something in a Scottish dialect. And it's my favorite of all, so I went and said right back after him what he said.
Oh my god.
And he heard me and said, you've got a great ear. Have you ever studied the phonetics or anything? I said, no, I just, I've always loved it. Well, it turns out he is an instructor and invites me. He says, I want to teach you. And so okay, great. So I learned the phonetic alphabet. A lot of what I know about history and linguistics kind of fed itself right into that. And after working with him for a year, he springs something on me that I did not know. He was the chairman of the speech department at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. I thought, okay, he's got cred. So not only that, he asks me to come and teach with him. Now, I hated school, so I never went to college. And here I was walking on the campus of one of the big schools for actors anywhere in the world.
Agreed.
And to this day, I still wonder if I'm going to get busted because I have no credential, no degree, no anything. But he was so impressed, he had me teach with him, and I ended up subbing for 4 separate years there. I became an instructor at Los Angeles Broadcasting School because one of my fellow students in another workshop was the chairwoman of the speech department there. So she brought me in to be a teacher. And once again, I was looking over my shoulder saying, I'm an actor. I trained as an actor. I've always done stuff as an actor. I never wanted to be a teacher, and here I am. Well, as it turned out, I just happened to be good at it. And I'm not bragging about it. Everybody just tells me that. Wow, you're really a great teacher. And I'm always kind of, okay, I guess. Thank you.
I mean, you have all the rights to brag, to be honest, at this stage.
So his master's in drama. And I said, oh, well, and he's credentialed and everything. And he said, look, Paul, you know how to do this and you teach it very well. He says, remember that a BS is exactly that. And remember that an MS means more of the same. And that a PhD means piled higher and deeper. He said, so
I mean,
if you know how to do this,
this is so accurate.
Just go ahead. Oh, that's what everybody that's ever gotten a degree tells me. A friend of mine who got his master's as an actor said, I sure wish I could give you my degree and you could use it as a teacher because it's pretty much worthless to me as an actor. You know, the training, yes, of course, the scholarship, the repetition, you've done 4 years, you've done 5 years, you've done all this stuff, and you get all this alphabet soup after your name. And then you also have what I would do anyway. Not every actor does this. Not every student does this. I would keep every dang book I got in college. That becomes part of my library. Many of them go and sell them off when they're done. I would keep everything. Again, as an instructor, I find what I've learned as an actor to be incredibly important. Specifically in terms of doing the voiceover, being a teacher, I'm exposed to many other actors, and one of them listening to me said, why don't you come in and audition for me? And I had never done this before. I had no idea about lip sync, whether I'd be good at it or not. I had no idea. So I stumbled into Robotech, which was my first series. That was back in 1985.
Wow.
And it was embarrassing for me. I was going in and I was needing to do 2 or 3 takes to get something. And I thought, oh my God, these people are going to kill me. They're going to hate me. They're going to recast. It's awful. It's, you know. And at one point in my first session, the director looks at me and says, why are you mad at yourself? Blah, blah, blah. He goes, you're as good at this as anyone I've ever seen. This is my first session ever. And I decided I'm not going to fight. I'm just going to take his word for it. But that can't be true. He must be being nice to me. But I hear him tell somebody else, yep, the kid came in and did 105 cues in 5 hours. Wow. So again, it was like being the teacher. I'm looking over my shoulder thinking, are they going to catch me because I've never done this before? But that's what got me into the voiceover part of it, from stage actor to voice actor, which is a panel that I use in my convention appearances. And I talk about the differences when you grow up doing stage work and you step in front of a microphone and you have no props, no fellow actors to look upon, no set, no sound effects. It's you alone. And so that's where having the craft of acting, being a crafted actor, helps a lot, because you can, in fact, convince the listener that you are speaking to someone else. I don't know if you've spoken with other voice actors at length, but 99.8% of the time, that's what we do. We stand alone in a booth.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, we don't get to have an exchange. Like if the 3 of us were sitting in a room right now, or the 4 of us, they would hand us scripts and we'd all have our own microphones. So we'd be able to look back and forth to each other and interact. That doesn't happen. We are alone in the booth.
Oh, right. Because actually, one of the because I keep on watching voice acting videos off and on, and in Japanese settings, so they have all the actors do the parts with each other. So why is it the case that in case of America, it's not there? So I mean, why is it?
It's very different in Japan. Their format essentially is to create the script, bring all the actors together, and do a half circle or however many there are, and gather in front of the microphone, or they each get their own mic and their own music stand to hold up the script or whatever. That's the Japanese method. It has its advantages because you are interacting with your fellow actors. If I heard Kevin, for instance, deliver a line in a way that was different from the first time we rehearsed, I could react to the different reading that he just gave me. That's kind of wonderful. Okay. The problem is you then, let's say there are 7 people working and they're going from start to finish through there. You may have people that are not very good at lip sync. There's a saying that we have that's very inaccurate in this country, which is the Japanese don't care about sync. Yes, they do. The problem is when they do that format and they're going to do maybe 1 or 2 takes the whole way through and then take the very best, it's hard to do. None of us here in America can do everything perfectly on each one. We don't know until we actually do the script, whether it's underwritten, overwritten, was the writer not writing to the sync itself. For instance, if the last syllable of my line of dialogue ends with "ah," okay, but the last word in Japanese ended with "m." So what do you have at the end of the line? You have me going "oh," and you have the character going. So there are problems like that that need to be solved by the writers. Change the words, somehow change the meaning around. And you don't get a chance to do that when you're in a rush. That's the way it works in Japan, is that they've got this work going through all the time. Because I do not disparage them. You work with Japanese actors one-on-one. The ones that are good with sync are just as good as Americans are with sync. Then there are those in America that aren't that good with sync. And it takes longer to finally get things. And the engineer has to work harder to move the cues on Pro Tools, for instance, So it really does make a big difference that we work alone and typically have a director working with us. But the best thing for me in my particular case, and I think it's true of many other American voice actors, when we have the director who's also the writer of the episode, the sessions go very, very smoothly. I'll be turning 65 in a couple of weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I'm actually faster now doing sync, voiceover, doing all these things in episodes, and live action too, for that matter. I've done quite a bit of that for Netflix. I'm faster now than I was.
Any challenges that have faced you as a voice actor?
When you were starting out.
Yeah, when you started.
Like when you were starting out as a new voice actor. So,
Well, yeah. As a young actor, stepping into the booth for the first time, and there was for quite a while a sense of being the novice, trying to learn, listening carefully. Most of the work I did initially was called looping. I was not doing anime. I began with anime with things like Robotech and some other shows. I did a few other smaller titles. But much of what I did was actually called looping. Now that's where you have live action in your own language and you're replacing the person on the screen. That's specifically looping. Dubbing is when you replace either an anime voice or a foreign language. That's when you're specifically dubbing. Looping is when you are doing replacement of live action voice in your own language. Right. Real quick bit of history there. When they first did that back in the 20s and 30s, they would take a section of film and run it through with the same kind of timing, the same or the guide track, I guess you would call it. I don't know if they called it back then, but they would do it with that, and they would take the length of film and loop it through a machine. And when they ran the footage, you would see it, and you would have the microphone live, and you would go ahead and make the voice replacement during that section of film. They would actually put it through a machine that would loop through. So that's where looping came from. So when you loop something, if there's an actor on screen and his line is, "Come with me, sir," and they didn't listen to the actor before they cast him, and he says, "Come with me, sir," well, that's not very officious or intimidating. Okay, so they would have me come into a session, a looping session, and replace that. Okay, now it's all automated to where you can see the footage from start to finish. I can look at the timing on the script, called in codes and out codes, and tell, do I have enough time? Is the line too short, too long, or whatever? But I can go ahead and time it with that guy. I would be looping that. On the other hand, if the line was something in Spanish and he said, "Está bien, señor," okay, Está bien, señor. 6 syllables. So I would say, that will be just fine, good sir. That's 6 syllables. But that's dubbing because it's a different language. The lips are not going to match. Okay. Dubbing does the same thing in anime because all we have is.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Yeah, we call it flappage, or because I'm half French, I like to call it flappage. But we just look at the flappage. And sometimes when the line is underwritten, you will say, for instance, if the cue is 4 syllables long, and so in other words, they underwrote it because the flappage is 6 long. So we would finish the cue and say flap, flap, and that's the way to tell the director, oops, we have to change this. We need to add something,
Right.
Yeah, so quick little difference between looping and dubbing. That's how that works. To finish up on the original question, when I got kind of not dragged in, I guess, but brought into the dubbing of anime and gaming later on, which did come in quite a bit later, this was all in a way an accident. I had never meant to do it, and it turns out I'm good at it. Kind of like teaching. I never meant to do it, never even thought about it, and it turns out I'm good at it. All an accident of birth. I am not bragging. All I can say is thank you, Mom and Dad, for giving me the ear for sound and somehow the eye-mouth coordination.
Wow.
Because believe me, I'm not coordinated otherwise. I'm not athletic at all, but for some reason I can sure match those lips and voices and all that stuff.
Amazing. It's so fascinating to know. And the best thing out of this is like you don't necessarily have to have a degree or anything to just like prove yourself to be better. If you're good at it, you just have to do it, right?
Exactly right. And there is a very a true statement, particularly in my case, when it comes to becoming a teacher, and it really extends over to being an actor. When someone said to me many years ago, if you really want to learn, teach. Because the first time I got in front of a group of people at the American Academy, I could say my first public teaching job in front of a class is in one of these renowned institutions around the world. And I'm walking around there with my briefcase feeling like an idiot. What am I doing here? But I knew what I was doing. But I discovered this as I went from student to student to student to student. You have 14, 15 people in a class, and you have to teach an accent in 2 hours. Okay. You have to go from start to finish. I never thought I was anything special. I just got it and did it. And okay, I'm an actor. I learned my skills and I do it. I didn't realize that I was unusual, because as I discovered going actor to actor to actor to actor, 90% of them cannot hear this. 90% of them cannot hear the sound and make it happen again. One line that I learned when I did a play, I played a Frenchman, and there were several lines of dialogue I had to do in French. And when I would say this line, I was speaking to an older woman who had complimented me, and I said, "Qu'est-ce que tu es adorable?" Okay, you are adorable. Okay. So when I teach people, they have to say, "Qu'est-ce que tu es? Qu'est-ce que tu es adorable?" Okay. Now that uvular R, like that, most Americans can't do that. And I say that without really saying anything bad. It's just that why would we? It's sort of like having, the tapped R, señor, as I said earlier. We don't have that in English, so why would people know how to do it? I never thought about that. I just did it. And here I'm finding all these students after student after student they can't, and they can't, I'm thinking, oh, all right, I guess I am unusual at this. Again, it's all this stuff that I'm discovering as I'm stumbling. And I didn't look like I was stumbling. Everybody thought, my God, you're a wonderful teacher. And I'm, like I say, over the shoulder. Are the credential police going to come and tap me on the shoulder and say, "Mr. St. Peter, come with us, sir. We noticed you can teach without a credential." So to loop back to my friend that told me about the BS, the MS, and the PhD and all that stuff, what I did to make myself comfortable was just to refer to myself as a guest instructor. Everyone will accept that as being, oh, okay, he's not on the staff here, but he knows his stuff. Because see, after that, after being at the academy and after teaching at Los Angeles Broadcasting, I also taught at Cal State University, Los Angeles, San Diego State University. I've advised to studios like HBO and Warner Brothers and people like that. And luckily, nobody walks up and says, "So, where'd you go to school, Paul?"
Wow.
I barely graduated Madison High in San Diego. That was it, people. It's all been private instructing, you know. So I have been rather successful and done very well as a teacher, quite unintentionally. You know.
Wow.
Yeah, and as an actor, you, which I'm sure that you had plenty of auditions. Can you recall the most challenging audition you've ever had?
Ooh, it covers a lot of ground. Let's see. When I presented in an audition where they need me to do several voices, and sometimes voices mixed with accents, that's very challenging, and that's happened to me many times. To kind of turn your question sideways, one audition that was actually easy for me, but the challenge was to convince the director. This was a film back in the 80s or 90s called Hell Hunters. And it was about Nazis in South America and what they've done to keep their money hidden, and they have bodyguards. And there was this one big, powerful, mean-looking bodyguard that they had. But they had to loop him because this big, powerful, mean bodyguard had this really crappy voice, apparently. So, and he was supposed to be German. So I came in, and the ones running the audition were the post-production supervisor and the ADR director. Now, if you don't know what ADR is, 99% of actors in Los Angeles don't know what it is. It's automated dialogue replacement. So when you hear ADR, a lot of people in the industry use the term, and we know what they mean. They don't even know what it stands for, but I know what they're talking about. It's post-production voice work, essentially. That's a nutshell. So the ADR director, post-production supervisor are both there listening to me, okay? And I did my first reading of this character in the German accent, and their jaws dropped and their eyes got this big. Oh my God, oh, wow. And so they brought me to another room, to Hans, the director of the film, a German. His name was Hans. And they said, "Hans, he's reading for the bodyguard and he sounds just like you." So and you talk about, now that's intimidating because it's not just I'm doing an accent as an actor. I'm brought in front of the real thing, a real genuine German who's also in charge of the production. But I'm thinking, I don't let that kind of thing intimidate me because I can do what I can do. I'm responsible for my conduct and my performance. I cannot control other things, but I can control those two things at all times. So I went ahead and did the reading again, and Hans looked very thoughtful. And well, we had callbacks, and I was there. I think there were 4 or 5 other actors reading, and I eventually did not get the role. And the post-production supervisor was so embarrassed by this, and they never do this, but he called me. They never ever contact an actor afterwards, but he called me and apologized profusely. He said, "I'm sorry, Paul. We wanted you so badly, but no kidding. And this is voiceover, remember? You know, like the old saying, put away the gun, this is radio, you know?" He said, "I can't envision Paul in the role." And they said, "Hans, nobody has to envision him in the role. It's voiceover. He's replacing. No, I just cannot do it." So in spite of my expertise, in spite of what was apparently a really good reading and the fact that I could lip sync very quickly, I still didn't get it. That was what I meant, putting the challenge, your question about a challenge on the side. That was one of the most intimidating and difficult things I had to do, was use all of my training to convince a German national that I was sounding just like a German. And everybody was great with it, and he didn't have a problem with my accent. but that's what I mean. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever encountered as an actor. He couldn't envision me in a voiceover role.
Yes, voiceover.
I mean,
Thank you. It's voiceover.
Yeah, it opens up so many avenues where you could be really great, you could nail the audition, but end of the day, if the director is not into it, then I mean,
Yeah. And the other thing I like to tell my fellow actors, especially the younger ones starting out that get discouraged and they never hire me there. They don't like me. That's one of my favorite ones. They just don't like me there. And I said, look, nobody ever gets a chance to know you well enough to like or dislike you. Okay. And you have to keep that in mind because it really is not personal. Okay. To your point of saying you can go in and nail it and be excellent and whatever. I will go in and I will sync better. Like I auditioned for Babylon 5 way back when. And I went into the booth and I was reading for the role. And even the person who's just going to be the engineer, she's not involved in directing me as an actor. She's not involved in casting me as an actor. Her job is to sit there and match my voice to this and whatnot. Even she said, my God, just he was hitting this stuff without any, any difficulties, any retakes or anything. And my friend that brought me in, who ran the voice group, said, well, that's the kind of people we bring to you. Okay. But I didn't get cast. Ultimately, here's what you have to remember. While you can control your conduct and your performance, as I said, okay, the hiring part and the creative part and the directing part and the production part and all that crap is not something you can put your hands on there. Yeah. Anyway, finishing up on that, you have to keep in mind that your performance is what you can control, and that's what you have to stop with. Once you finish the audition, walk away because your part is done. It's up to them now.
Right. So on that subject, of course, there's so many parts that you will audition for, and you didn't get, like you said. But what was the part that you really wanted? Like the moment you heard about it, you were like, yeah, I want this, and I want it to the nail. And you didn't get it, but like, how did you not let it get you down?
In one particular case, when it was just about the money. And I didn't know anything about it. I was approached by my agent, and this client wants somebody to do, and it was just like a huge volume of work. I forget exactly what it was about, but they want, they heard your demo and they're talking to me about you. I didn't have that many details about the job, but the thing I remember about it was that it would be 6 weeks in Tokyo and $100,000 buyout. Okay. Those are harder to forget. I walk away from my auditions. I say, well, that's done. And, then if I get cast, I get cast right. If I don't, I don't. And it's only when people ask me questions like you're asking me now, okay, that I remember that. Otherwise, I let it go. So things like that sort of stick in your mind a little more strongly than I didn't get that little gig over here. There was... and I have to remember the project because so many things for all of us, the Steve Blooms of the world and the Cam Clarks and the Richard Epcars of the world, we all get so many things coming across our gun sites that come and go so quickly because it's auditions, it's jobs and whatever, and then they're gone. And it's smart to let them go. Don't dwell, I can't remember the name of the project exactly, but this was when I went in to my agent's office to audition. And she was contacted because the client knows my work. Most of the time the agent gets, let's say, 6 roles, and it's 4 men, 2 women. The men, they need a young kid, they need a medium age character and an older character and a monster character or something like that. And for the women, they want the ingenue, the young hero, but then they have the witch and the sorceress and all that crap, right? So she will bring people in accordingly. Well, my agent has still never heard all of my voices. And so she knows from my demo that I'm very, very versatile. I can do a lot of different things. But I went into her office for this one. She was recording. I went up to the mic and she had her back to me as she was working on Pro Tools. And I began the lines of dialogue while, again, she had her back to me. She didn't have a chance to see, and she'd never heard me do this voice before. And I was basically full Kurama. I went full nine-tailed fox. And she had no idea I could sound like this. And so whatever my lines were, I will defeat them. I will destroy them. I will end.
Together, man. Keep it together.
I'm sorry, I can't help it.
Get him some water, okay? Maybe.
Someone getting some water?
Yeah. No,
Get him some
it's
sake.
okay, keep it together, Asad. Keep it together.
He needs some sake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when, hang on. So when I was doing the lines of dialogue and I finished, my agent turned around to me and said, if they don't cast you for this role, they are a bunch of idiots. And then she turned back to her computer and her body actually did this, you know, because she had never heard me do that. And especially hearing it from me with not looking at me, all she heard was this disembodied, evil, demonic voice coming out of Sweet Paul, you know. So when I surprise her with a brand new voice, it always throws her off. And that's why sometimes she sends me auditions. And she said, I wouldn't have thought about this, but with you, I never know. So here, audition for this one. You know? So I'm sorry, that your question then?
I mean, someone with your massive amount of experience, you probably have a lot of friends as voice actors. How did you meet them, and who of those voice actors are very close friends with you?
Well, we used to have something called Walla. Okay, for anime, you would have now Walla is considered the background sounds and voices of people. It comes from a very, very old saying. If you've been around as long as I have, and you worked with the industry people that go back to video, you know, before we had Pro Tools or anything else. I hear the stories from the old timers then, and now I'm an old timer. Okay, but in the old days when they first had background, let's say a film was shot in the 1920s or early 30s, and two characters, like if you guys were holding a conversation and there were 20 people behind you in an open market or something like that. Well, when they first did that, they would have you two guys speaking and they would record you and then they would listen back. And then they would see all these people in the background doing this and all that stuff. And of course, nothing was recorded. Oops, this looks bad. See, when you went from silent film to sound, a whole host of problems suddenly became quite apparent. All right. So they said, we have to create something. So what they did was they would bring 5 or 6 people in and they would say, we just need some sound in the background. So they were afraid that somebody would say something like, and to this day, we don't do this in a session. You don't say, over here, because that might be what is called a free and clear. So right in the middle of your dialogue, there might be a tiny pause and you heard somebody go, over here. And so everybody's looking, well, they're trying to look around, but you never heard that because it didn't happen when you were doing a recording. So instead they said, don't say anything specific, just do this. Walla, 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 walla. So in some of the oldest films, when you listen to the background sounds, you'll actually hear, and they dial it way down, of course, if you know how they set levels and stuff like that. So essentially it's only to do that, to fill the background sound. Trouble is sound equipment got better. And then you could hear walla, 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 walla. So now we had to, as an ADR group, go in and pick things up like, yes, ma'am, would you like that? Yes, I would. I want to get one for my little boy too. He's about 3, you know, and then the guy would say, yes, ma'am, I just happen to have stuff right here. So we are doing that based on the picture we're seeing in the background. All right. And so it becomes more complex as you go along. Now, we used to do Walla as groups of actors that did voiceover, and that was when we got to socialize. That was when we got to go out to lunch afterwards, go out to dinner afterwards. Or you finished at 6 o'clock, hey guys, drinks are on me, you know, happy hour over at blah, blah, blah pub, you know. Now we don't do that anymore. But we don't get to hang out. Now it's, when I go into a session, and let's say I was doing Leomon or Wormmon for Digimon, and I finished 20 minutes early. And they said, okay, well, there's some background stuff we can pick up if you don't mind. I go, oh, not at all. So they said, all right, This is in a hallway, and there are 4 people talking way off in the background. So just pick something up for them. I would say, okay, guys, we're going to have a meeting tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Can you all be there? Yes, yes, we can all be there. Okay, great. I'll see you then. And then they cut to another scene. They have me do that alone. When Bo Billingsley goes in and finishes a character and he's got a half an hour left or 10 minutes or whatever, they say, okay, let's go ahead and pick this stuff up, and he will do the same thing. And sometimes it'll be 4 actors that worked 4 different sessions, all being heard as the actors in that hallway. And we never met each other, never saw each other. So instead of doing wall sessions, they now do something called layering. They just layer in our voices. And it's so unfortunate because now the only time I see my friends are either at union meetings or at conventions.
So which voice actors are like your best friends? Like, you know, your buddies, I would say.
Oh, my BFFs.
Yes.
Well, the first one that comes to mind is Richard Epcar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we go all the way back to Robotech. We started outside of work. We started seeing each other across the poker table, and it's fun to play poker with a bunch of voice actors. I'll raise you $2. Oh yes, I'll see you 2 and raise you 5. So it sounds like a voiceover session when we're in there because everybody has these wonderful trained instruments that are refined for years and years, and then someone says, "It's your deal." Thank you. I think I'll call Jacks or Better Trips to win. Oh, I think that's a great game, don't you? And we're not trying. It's just the way we sound all the time. I got to be better friends with Richard as we were working, and then had a chance to socialize. And then over the years, we've gotten to be good friends outside of work because of other associations, mutual friends. His daughter was in middle school and had a project regarding Shakespeare. And their specific project, or at least hers, was Henry IV, Part 1. And it so happens I have done that play. I was also 11 seasons with the Nevada Shakespeare Festival. You see what I mean when I say all this stuff I stumbled into being a voice actor? I have all this incredible background as an actor. I never thought about, well, I'm going to stand in front of a microphone. You think in terms of putting on doublet, hose, armor, drawing a sword, and I'm going to be an actor. That's how you start anyway, or I did. Anyway, his daughter needed guidance, and so I helped her out with what would amount to like a term paper. And her mom told me later on, Ellen, wonderful Ellen, Ellen told me later on that when her daughter went to class, she said, and I got to talk to a real Shakespearean actor, and I was just glowing. That's wonderful. So Richard and I both enjoy the same kind of cigars. I introduced him to a very, very good amber beer made in Mexico. He'd never tried it before. Now it's part of his welcome mat. When he puts things out, that's one of the beers he puts out because it's the one that I brought to him and I love it so much. But he and I can sit for hours and smoke cigars and just talk. We're just like that close, Jeff Nimoy is another close actor with me. Steve Bloom, Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, Ellen, yes, again, Ellen Epstar, Ellen Epcar, Ellen Stern Epcar. I've gotten to be pretty close with a friend who sheltered with me during the COVID. When it first began, he was living with me for 2 months. He helped me set up my booth here. I've advised him on voice work and character work and things like that. So that's John Allen, who's also a wrestler. So John Allen, wrestler, John Allen, voiceover actor, good friend of mine. And many, many, many others. It's hard to name everyone off. There's another one named Jerry Gelb, who's run a voice group that I've worked with in the past. And he's done work on things like the Cowboy Bebop movie. Bringing up Bebop, that's one of my favorite titles I've ever worked on. And there was Bo Billingsley, another close friend of mine. Wendy Lee, very close friend of mine because she and I go back to Robotech. And Wendy and I have a lot of inside jokes because we both worked on Cowboy Bebop. So whenever I see Wendy, she says, "Paul, how are you?" I say, "Shucks, howdy, how you doing, Wendy?" You know, so, and she couldn't believe that that was my voice. When she heard me do it, she didn't think I was the actor that did that. This was like 5 years after we wrapped production. I said a line as Punch, and she looked at me with eyes this big, and she said, "That was you?" Utterly, completely destroyed her, you know. We all have our wonderful stories from the things that we've done. And my nephew, who asked me about being a voice actor, interviewed me because when he was in college, he was required to do an interview with somebody in the business, so to speak. And he asked me, and I said, "Oh, that'd be great." And he asked me, "What's the best part about being an actor?" And I said, "It's as much as I love the work and as much as it feeds me, the best part is really the relationships that I've created with everybody, the friends I've made over the years." That's the first thing that leaps to my mind when you say, "What's the best part about it?" That's absolutely the best part. Again, I love what I do. I love the creativity. It does really nurture my soul and feed my spirit. Taxes your body like crazy, but you are just absolutely, as a human being in my particular case, it's one reason it's easy for me to choose to be an actor, because there's literally nothing else I can imagine that I would have even the trace of passion that I do for acting.
So, do you give classes in voice acting?
I do privately, and in a sense, when I'm doing a panel at a convention, I've been told this again and again and again. People say your panels are like master classes. And I do teach people how to make the voices. I do have an actual panel called Voice Maker. And I show them how I create a voice from start to finish. And that is, in a way, teaching them. I don't get to sit down with the individual and say, "Okay, how are we doing?" and write stuff. When I was teaching at Los Angeles Broadcasting School, I did that one-on-one with everybody. And I was known as the strictest instructor in the school. I had, and again, not knowing what I was doing, that was one of my first teaching gigs. I figured because I was laughing and having a great time, they probably thought I was pretty relaxed. But that was the single universal review I got from every graduate or near graduate. I'm the strictest teacher in the school. I went, okay. As an actor, I'm very exacting with myself, and I was the same way with them. And that helped them because many of them went on to do career in radio. You know, when I teach privately, if they want to learn things regarding the acting craft, for instance, someone comes to me and they need to do something classical, I will teach them iambic pentameter. I will teach them about the caesura. I will teach them about the technical parts of doing verse poetry, which is Shakespeare, Ben Jonson, Christopher Marlowe. You know, these are writers that used a very strict poetry called verse. Okay, sometimes it's something along the lines of something narrative. Okay, so if you did the Odyssey or the Iliad, if you're reading from that, that is called narrative poetry. Okay, it's still a very strict style. Then they are going to maybe do something that has it's not poetry per se. It's not rhyming. It doesn't have rhyming couplets. It doesn't have the same structure, but it's still kind of flowery in its speech. It's still beautiful to listen to. That's called poetic prose. Prose just means everyday speech, because a lot of people go, you know, they use it like it's some disparaging term, but it isn't. It just means everyday common speech that doesn't have any, you know, structure or rules to it for an actor. But you can speak beautifully, and the writer can write things that are beautiful, like describing a sunset. Okay, that is poetic prose. I can teach them how to use the language that way. I work with someone one-on-one, or I will work with an entire class and say, this is how you appreciate the language. This is the way it was written. If, on the other hand, I'm working with someone on accents or dialects, I will teach them the phonetic alphabet. And that's where I am very, very exacting. The nice thing is, once I teach you the phonetic alphabet and you learn it properly, you have a new language for the rest of your life, and you and I speak the same language. I can give you an accent over the phone.
Roxas should never have existed in the first place. What you seek is impossible.
So now we're going to come to some of your iconic roles. And of course, it doesn't, of course, it's incomplete without Xemnas being mentioned, of course. Yeah, Xemnas is like one of...
Never heard of him. I have no idea who he is. Xemnas who?
There's another name for that person, which I have heard in conventions, but I can't say it right now.
Yeah, and I have stories. Believe me, I have stories.
Oh my god!
Well, let's put it this way: in other countries, they don't know that story. It's a very American thing. So I've, through my influence as a guest traveling the world, I've spread that terrible thing to Canada and Ireland and England and Australia. I go there and I teach them the story. Okay, and they understand where it came from. And then now, all of those conventions, when I go back, I hold up my fist and I start the chant, and they're all there ready for me. So.
That's amazing. So tell us about Xemnas himself. Like, how did you audition for him? What was the process, and how did they get you for Xemnas?
They thought I had done the role of Vicious in Cowboy Bebop, and I didn't. You tend to remember a character name like that, you know. If I'm third guard from the right, no, I'm not going to write that down. Hey, I was third guard from the right in Samurai Champloo, you know. I was in Samurai Champloo, but I don't remember the role, and it certainly wasn't guard number 2. But if it's a role named Vicious, that sticks with you. But on the other hand, we have all done so many things, it's easy to forget. I couldn't remember the character of Grand Fisher in Bleach. I just remembered I did this role, and somebody showed me the picture. I said, "Oh yeah, I remember that. Who was I?" And they said, "Grand Fisher." Oh, okay, good. Yeah. So they said, well, they want you to do the same voice as you did in Vicious for Cowboy Bebop. Now, I didn't know, and I didn't go back and listen to the series. I just went in and auditioned with a voice that I thought would fit. And by one of the weirdest, strangest coincidences in all of show business, or at least this part of it, it was exactly what they were after. So they cast me, and the director said, "Oh, I went and listened to Bebop. You didn't do the voice of Vicious, but they did pick you." And so later on, when I listened to the episodes that Vicious was in, I said, "Oh my God, I sound just like Xemnas, just sounds like Vicious," or back and forth. So it was an accidental audition, and I booked it.
This is so cool. Can we ask you to do just one line as Xemnas? I mean,
well, you can ask anything. Yeah, that's fine. Let me see. Let me do one of my favorite ones. Remember, nothingness is eternal. That's the Chills one.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm composed. I'm composed.
It's fine. It's good.
Yeah.
I'm counting on you to prop him up, because I know he's waved a few times. So thank you. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Because
if he falls in the other direction, though, I don't know. You may have to grab him, because he might
I'm
fall.
just gonna let him fall. Continue the center.
Oh, okay. Put some padding down on the other side in case you lose track and he's over.
So were there any challenges with Xemnas? Like, of course, you got the voice, but of course, there are so many challenges that come up as you're doing the part. So were there any challenges with Xemnas, or was it a smooth sail?
Oh, no, not smooth at all, because at the beginning, they said they wanted it to match the Japanese in terms of pacing. And the English was also underwritten. It was absurd. They would not allow us to add words. They would not allow us to uncontract. Okay. So if the line was, "He can't be allowed," okay. The trouble is, the timing was this long when the line was only that long. And they wouldn't even let me say, like I say, uncontract. I couldn't say, "He cannot be allowed," to try to fill the time out. They wouldn't let us do this. So the reason that I deliver the lines the way I do was not the way that I did it when I auditioned. I did the voice, but everything had to be elongated to try to fit the timing. And we did 4 hours in the first session of that kind of thing. And when I left the booth and went home, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. So they brought me in for the second one. They said, okay, the client loved everything. It was great, fantastic. Let's keep going. So, for instance, one of my lines was, Ansem the wise, you look pathetic. Okay. So Ansem the wise, you look pathetic. That's this long. The timing was this long. So if you hear that line in the game, and I did it like this to fill the timeout. Ansem the wise, you look pathetic. And so that's why you hear my K's and my Z's and my mms as very long. It's the reason I do the delivery that way. It was purely a technical issue. My job as an actor is to make that stuff work. I still need to connect. I still need to make the character work. I still need to bring the intention. I still need to bring the intensity. One thing everybody says is, oh my God, all that intensity in Xemnas. It's because the director and the engineer, the producer, all of us and I were trying to do this, make all this stuff happen. So there's a lot of intensity there simply because of the technical requirements. That was the single biggest challenge of doing that. And now it's become part of it. So every time I go in and do a session, I'm going to walk in and go, okay, think long form, long form. Even on something like that one of my famous ones that everybody memes, which is indeed.
Yes.
How long I said indeed? Indeed. The D's are longer. So.
But this is really interesting to know, like how you were able to fill the space. So does it happen with a lot of the voiceover roles? I'm digressing a bit, but just as a question, like, does it happen with a lot of voiceover roles that the queue is this much and the timing is this long?
That's actually an excellent question, because we are constantly we run into scripts, regardless of where they may have come from. Okay, if they originated in America, it's less often the case. But if it's Japan, or I'm working on Miraculous Ladybug, if you know the show.
Master Fu.
Oh yes, Master Fu. When we get the scripts there, the translation from French to English. Typically, if they're going to do anything, they're going to squeeze a lot into the queue. So it tends to be a little bit overwritten. We can fix that with pacing, but sometimes we actually rewrite on the spot. As long as you don't change the meaning, typically it's okay. There are other times when we have, I won't say a name, but a particular writer that every time she writes an episode, or every time this writer writes an episode, it tends to be underwritten. So at the end of the queue, we always add her name, because we finish and then they're still flapping afterwards. Remember what I said earlier by flap, flap on the end? Okay, so we would finish the queue and then say her name. And that the director would go, oh, okay, yeah. So we have to start adding syllables and stuff. But that's a small thing, though. That's even with this writer who's very good at what she does, he or she does. But it's a small thing. A couple of words here and there. That's no problem. I tend to add things on the spot, on the fly, without asking. If I can look at the time code and look at the line and know if it's short or long. Okay, part of my skill set. I developed it over the years of fixing things that we were going in. Director would say, "Oh, thank you. Thanks for adding that." I said, "Yeah, I knew it was going to be short." So then it fit because I fixed it without saying anything, on the fly. That's a small thing. The thing we encountered with Kingdom Hearts was almost across the board, at least in my character. That was every single time. That's why I say I go in there with the long ball in mind every single time. So uncommon in that sort of, to that degree, but pretty common in the writing. Most of the time in my encounters, the writer wants to put something really good in there, and so they use better language and they use more descriptive lines, etc. The problem is it's longer. They forgot sync in the act of writing better, and that's okay. Give me good language. When the script is well written, it's a joy to do. when the script is badly written, it is a pain to try and make it work.
Don't thank me. It weirds me out. I only did what I did because I'd rather deal with you than with Madara.
So, tell us about your audition for Kurama.
I did an audition for Kurama.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they called me. They just called me. Do you guys know the Digimon movie?
Yeah.
I did the voices for Diaboromon and the voices for Kokomon, the big monster with the long floppy ears. Okay. I didn't audition for that either. They just brought me in because they know I do that voice. And that's now gotten to, it's around enough with enough directors that know me very well. When a client calls and they want me, they say, have him do that voice. And that's all I need to hear. I know that they want that voice. When it was Digimon, they cast me and they said, okay, you're going to be doing these roles. We need you to do your monster voices. So I went in and I made people like, you know, just like my agent did. One woman was in from Disney Studios. She came in with her husband and she was freaked. I kept doing that voice. Go back, you know. And the longer she stayed in the session and listened to me, the more freaked out she got. And she took her sweater and put it around her. And she looked like me at this whole time like this. I'm not exaggerating. I had an hour and a half of this poor woman, and she was kind of diagonally to me so I could see. She was like this the whole time. And I'm not exaggerating. That is not, I'm not making anything that's exactly the way it was. She finally got so freaked she left. I freaked her out so much. So it was like with my agent. But the thing is, my agent, we were done in like 15 minutes. This poor woman was sitting there and it just kept getting worse and worse for her. She had to leave. And then her husband, who's the exec with Disney, said, well, what are you doing to make his voice do that? And the director said, that's all Paul. We're not doing anything, you know. Wow. So it's that voice. So when the time came for Digimon, I'm sorry, for Naruto, the people there that do the studio know me, and they know it, and they said, we want you to come in and do the Nine-Tailed Demon Fox. We want you to do that voice. So I'm ready. So in that case, my reputation and my skill level got me the role without auditioning. That's a great feeling. They just cast you. It's wonderful.
So throughout the years, how were you able to maintain your voice, not lose it? I mean, it's really incredible.
Oh, when I tell people about doing that voice, and this is for you, young man, Asad.
Yes, sir.
Do not do that voice unless you're trained. You will hurt yourself. Okay. You're probably doing it in a way that you can maintain it, but not for 2 or 3 hours, or I can do up to 5 hours and still walk away and still be in good shape. I can still work the next day. But unless you are very, very, very well trained, don't do that. Because I hear this time and time again in panels. I hear it time and time again, whether I'm Zooming with someone or speaking with someone in person. Oh, that's not so hard. I'll just do this. You know, and within 5 minutes, they have blood coming out of their ears and their throats are bleeding and all this stuff. It's actually very bad for your voice to do what I do. I know how to do it, how to get away with it, and not hurt myself. It fatigues, of course, and you feel a little bit of discomfort. That's why I stop it at 4 or 5 hours. And then, you know, I can come back again and work for somebody else with a different voice the next day. But I tell them, if we're going to be doing concentrated work for 3, 4, and 5 hours at a time, that's great. I'll be able to give you all you need for the whole session. I said, but we need to take a day off before we come back and do it again. For the Digimon movie, that's what I did. We took 4 days because that's the way the schedule worked out anyway. But I said, let's give me some time. And they said, oh, okay, great. So when I came back and they said, okay, let's play a reference from what you did before. And they just say, we'll give you a ref. Okay, let's give you the ref. And so I listened back to what I had done a few days ago and I went, my God, that was me. Because I don't walk around talking that way. You know, you guys are hearing my real voice for the first time, unless you've actually been, you know, watching me on, you know, Facebook or YouTube. if you haven't done that, then you're hearing my voice for the first time, because I never get to use my own voice. It's always something else. I'm always a monster. I'm always an old character like this, or I'm some sort of a Scotsman like this, or an Irishman along the lines, when I do a French accent, I'm doing a different accent and I'm doing a different voice. So nobody knows the way I sound. It is different. Oui, or non, peut-être. So I'm always doing that. So when I go in and do a panel, I say, welcome to the voice maker or the villains of Paul St. Peter. I said, and I am Paul St. Peter, and this is what I sound like, because I almost never get to use my own voice. I'm going to be doing on Monday, 2 days from now, a session on a game, and I can't tell you anything beyond that, but they said, okay, they picked you for this character. So I had auditioned for 5 characters on this game. So I had to go back, find my sample and listen. And I said, oh my God, that's my voice. I get to be me. That's extremely unusual. The way I maintain my voice to roundabout, because everything I say kind of goes back and forth and around. But I do a voice lesson that I've been doing for approximately 35 years now. I do that almost every day. I do speech warm-ups. I also do not smoke. I do not smoke anything. I also limit very much my various poisons, very little alcohol. And I drink a lot of water. And I am careful about eating foods that have anything with dairy products, have anything with anything syrupy, like Coke. Sodas are syrup-based, sugar-based. All that crap, whether it's dairy or syrupy stuff, gets on your vocal cords and stays there for up to 4 hours before it will clear off and you can work. I simply don't have that stuff in my diet for the most part. A little bit, but for the most part, I don't do it. That keeps your voice, your resonance clear as a bell. It's wonderful.
You taking notes?
Yeah, I am mentally taking notes.
Well,
also,
you can listen to the playback later and write this stuff down. But yeah, when I teach vocal care and all that stuff, it's extremely involving. I talk about all the do's and don'ts, what you should eat and should not eat, how you should take care of your voice, what you need to do when you're working. The most important thing I can teach people is breath control.
When you hear Kurama, and you hear these qualities, and I'm doing this sort of thing.
There are ways to do that and get away with it. It's not easy to learn. It's easy for me to teach because I can do it easily. It's not easy to learn, but once you do, you can start doing that sort of thing. I just don't recommend anybody try it without the training.
Right. So now it's the last segment of the interview where some of the fans have left some questions on the comment sections. So I'll just go through them and you can answer them. So the first question is from Lighter Cause, and she said that, was there any specific character in Kingdom Hearts that you wanted to voice apart from Xemnas?
Oh, I kind of like Zigbar. If I could go in a very, very different direction, I can't vocally, but if I could, because of the writing and the character development, I'd love to be Sora.
Sora?
Yeah. Again, directions you can't go in. I sound the way I do. No matter how much I young my voice up, I'm still a guy with a deep voice, younging his voice up. See, Wow. I do this if I have to be a younger character, or like they have a guy in his 20s that said, yes, sir, I'll take care of that right away, sir. I can't say,
yes, sir, I'll take care of that right away.
Neither can I say,
certainly, I will do that for you right now.
That you can't do kids and young characters and sound the way I do. So, as I say, a different direction.
True. So that was the first question. Second question is by Night Creeper 23, and she asks, like, are voices of humanoid characters easier to do, or those of pets and animals? I think this is more of Digimon related question, I believe.
Yeah, you have to make the voice relatable to the listener. So even if it's an animal, you need to bring it to the sort of the human level and that sort of thing.
But if you're Leomon, you need to keep in mind that Leomon's big and powerful. Or, one of my favorite characters of all time is Wormmon, So even though he's tiny, I use a deep voice for him. So you look at the breakdown of the character, what's he like? You look at the picture, and then you look at the dialogue. And Wormmon just spoke to me right away. Okay. The challenges of doing animal characters sometimes when they want you to be a snake, stuff like that. You do need to add some of those qualities. So those, and that's a very, very good question, Night Creeper 23. Okay. It does present you with different challenges. Being a human character, they want you to be younger, older, more sinister, more likable, a little bit slower, maybe not very sharp, that kind of thing. Yeah. So they're bringing more along. The voice brings more character traits than it does physical traits.
Right. Cool. We have just a derivative question. Omer Khan asks, what are your thoughts about Leomon constantly being killed?
I get this a lot. It's I don't want to say it's annoying, but I think, come on, people, give them a break. I know that we digivolve and we come back. I know we're digital, and I have an obituary list of characters over my career that it just goes. It's longer than both of my arms together. It just keeps going. My characters, you get killed all the time. So the first time Leomon died, I said, "No, you can't do this." They said, "Trust me, he comes back." So in that sense, it's bothersome. I don't like to have a character die off, but it's not terrible for me because I know, well, he can just digivolve and show up again, like I did again and again and again.
Awesome. And now we have the last question from a fan, Hajra Sajjad. She says, how does it feel like to have been a giant part of so many childhoods? I mean, particularly mine as well.
Oh, that's, it's gratifying and it's moving. One thing that happens when I go to a convention, I have my autograph table. I've commissioned prints of my characters. Okay, I have an artist create them for me and with my ideas, but sometimes just basically what the character looks like. But I will say, could you have him do this? Or I'd like to have him looking up as opposed to down or something like that. And I have all those prints out there. I'm selling them with autographs and things like that. What really makes me feel wonderful is when somebody walks up and they look at that and they say, this is my childhood. One of my biggest fans is a girl in Virginia. It was her birthday yesterday. And whenever I do the voice of Wormmon at a panel, she is always so moved. She ends up on the floor going like, oh my God, it absolutely reduces her to tears. And so yesterday I sent a text message to her saying, happy birthday, Uncle Wormmon loves you, And whenever I do the voice, she just melts, absolutely melts. That is the best part of relating with the fans, just seeing what a difference it made. And there have been times when it's been really very, very heart-wrenching. Someone came up to me and Bo Billingsley. We were at the tables right next to each other, and this person knew Cowboy Bebop. And she told us, she said, Cowboy Bebop saved my life. Something about the show resonated with me. She says, I was going to take my own life. I just had, as a young person, I just thought, it's it. I don't want to do this anymore. But something about that show and something about the way we related to each other changed her experience of life. And so it was something that deep. There have been people that have come up to me that said, this happened in London. A guy told me that he was so withdrawn, and because he's on the mildly autistic, lower end spectrum, I think they call it, he didn't know what to say or how to say things to people, and that is part of an element of being autistic. You can't connect the dots that well. Being someone who was able to watch what we did in the shows that we've done allowed him to come out of his shell a little bit and find out that he could go to conventions. And even though he felt uncomfortable, he also felt that he was among friends. As he said to me, I felt like I'm with a brother when I'm with you. Okay. Stuff like that gets me a little worked up, So that's where it's not just cartoons. It's stuff that really helps people.
I don't know who you are, but I do know you're being used. This power you've been given, is it worth hurting these children to keep it?
I did have like a bunch of industry-related questions because I'm actually, to give you a bit of context, I'm a video game journalist. That's what I do for a living. And I've seen, like, I obviously was looking you up, and you had quite a fair bit of video game work done. The first obvious question would be, do you ever game if at all, if you have the time?
Oh, gaming?
Yeah. Do you play games if you have the time? I'm sure you're very busy. You're a very busy man, but have you ever got to play any of the games, especially the characters you have voiced?
Only Kingdom Hearts. Now, Kingdom Hearts 3, I got to play the beta version. So I went to a reception where they wanted to have as many cast members show up, champagne and, sushi and all sorts of other wonderful stuff. But they actually had a beta version of the game available. So it was possible for me to play as Xemnas in the part of the game where there were nobodies running through the grass and stuff like that near the beginning. And also I have played 2 and Dream Drop Distance. Unfortunately, if I was going to play all of the games that I do, I would have to have all the platforms, including Wii. I did play, oh my heavens, which one was it? Yes, Medal of Honor, Spearhead. I was in that. They needed an American who would be an Englishman, so I can't have a problem with that sort of thing. So they brought me in to be a commander and the colonel and the general, and I'd say stand fast and things like that. So I got to play that a little bit. It was hard to find me in there though, because a lot of the stuff we do is background voice. But so I played a little bit of Medal of Honor, but I don't get to play very much. And again, I would have to go out and get all these games because oddly enough, the clients don't give them to us for free. That does happen once in a while, but we don't finish the production and say, okay, everybody, you're on the mailing list. You'll all be getting a PS4 and you'll all be getting copies of the game. We don't get that treatment, sometimes.
And yeah. And my final question, and this is a bit more of a serious industry question, and if you can't answer, that's totally fine. Obviously, we have a pandemic going on. A lot of the productions are either moving house or they're canceling seasons. Especially we're looking at what Netflix did with Glow. They prepared an entire season, but then they canceled it abruptly. Especially for Netflix, like people like the framework of animation and voiceover work, everything's suddenly changing. The games are changing. The publishers and not just publishers, like aggregators like Netflix and Hulu. We have all this, of course. Animaniacs is coming back, which is a cool thing. I can't believe Animaniacs is coming back. But stuff like this is like you're at the mercy of not big production, not NBC or whatever. You have your new players in the market. How does this place voice actors as well? I'm sure there's a huge stress to find work, or at least I'm not sure. I mean, because you're lucky enough to be in a union, but for people who are not in the same case, people who are freelance voice actors, how does the pandemic shift for them?
Most of what we've been doing for several months has been work at home. I have a setup here that allows me to record for anime, film, television. My equipment, my hookup and all that sort of thing is at least good enough and sometimes really wonderful. For Miraculous Ladybug, we did a PSA about wearing masks. Okay, those of you who don't know, a public service announcement. Okay, but it was about wearing masks and staying, distancing and stuff like that. And as Master Fu, I had to tell Ladybug and Cat Noir not to kiss. And so that was part of the fun of the session. But I recorded that here in my studio, in my walk-in little thing here. So did Christina V and Bryce Pappenbrook. So we all did that remotely. They put it together, put it on TV, put it on YouTube and that sort of thing. And it all worked. That doesn't mean it works every single time. I just had a very frustrating episode this past week where we couldn't get a clean connection, so I didn't get to work on a new show called Great Pretender. Okay, and that was frustrating. That's the first time that's happened to me. And my hookups have always been good. Everything's been fine, but all we had was crackly, staticky sound. And so even working with 3 different engineers on different times, we could not solve the problem. So that's the challenge. Luckily, some studios, because they're taking all of the precautions, scrubbing the air as it were, and I bring in my own headphones and sanitize them and stuff like that. There are studios that are beginning to reopen with very, very restrictive setups. So I walk in, I'm in the booth by myself. They sanitize everything. I have my gloves on. I bring my mask. I take it off only when I speak. When I leave, they sanitize for another half an hour until the other actor comes in. And in the studios, they're taking precautions that make me feel safer than when I go to the market or the gas station. In that sense, I'm very happy that they're doing that. The union has cleared working in studios again, too, as long as they take those precautions. The union actually has come up with a very exhaustive list of what they need to do. And so the in-studio work is coming back, but the big challenge is for us to try and record here at home effectively.
Cool. Asad, Abdulla, that's it from me. And yeah, Paul, thank you so much for your time. I do apologize for
my honor, gentlemen. My absolute honor.
Seriously, it's just as an aspiring voice actor, like the first time you came on Instagram and I followed you immediately, I was like, whoa, this is one of the voices I have like literally heard from 2013 onwards when I first saw Naruto. So it's just like, thanks to this guy, he's just controlling my fanboy side right now.
Believe me, he's going to be crying after this. I spoke to him. Please. You're going to do it anyway, so.
Yeah, I could say. But before we go, Paul, I just have one last request. This is more coming from a fanboy, but I know you told me not to do this voice, but is it possible I can do my Kurama voice and you can reply to me in your Xemnas' voice?
Sure.
Okay, this is happening.
Ready?
All right.
Yeah,
Okay. Hang on.
Xemnas, I think you do an excellent job as the leader of Organization 13. Thank you, my foxy friend. And I will continue to lead until I control everything.
Thank you so much. Oh my God.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
But seriously, thank you so much, Paul.
He's not going to sleep tonight.
Oh yeah, no.
It's very nice we get to have this exposure with actors like yourself because we don't have Comic-Con anymore. And this was our only avenue to talk to you. But no, happy to. Are there any links that you have that you can share with us of your previous work, so we can do like B-roll when talking over, so we don't get copyright striked? I'm just trying to make sure.
Well, my specific site is called the Paul St. Peter fan site.
Gotcha. All right.
And that is on Facebook.
Got it.
And beyond that, I'm really not linked into all of the Digimon stuff, although that's going to be the case soon. We're in the 20th anniversary of the 3rd season.
Yeah.
And so we're putting together remote sessions where we'll be able to get the actors together and spend some
nice.
time.
All right.
Oh.
And I've done some remote stuff with conventions where we do have Q&A panels. Okay. I can't really do my regular panels in my normal format. I can talk about the characters, and as I say, I do one called Voice Maker. I can explain how they do that. Or one of my favorite panels to do is the villains of Paul St. Peter. And so everyone who has a question about those characters and how I create the voices can talk to me. So there are times when we can do things remotely that are still kind of effective, but it's still not the same. And I appreciate you guys doing this because it is a way for us to connect with the fans, or as I call them, the attendees, but now they're the fans because we don't get to have attendance at conventions.
True.
But like Night Creeper 23, being able to ask a question like that, where we wouldn't normally have a chance to do it. That's great, and I love the fact that you guys have done this, because it is a way for us to sort of build that bridge and be able to have the time. And now this is all available to anyone who comes to you, and they can listen and hear and the things that I talk about and what I do in my work.
Sweet. Sorry. All right. So thank you so much for your time once again. And Asad, Abdulla, anything else?
No, that's all from us.
I'm gonna have to deal with this guy now.
I know.
Yeah.
That's going to be the hardest part of the evening, is dealing with him after we've done all this, right? So,
Oh,
Abdulla, Asad, Kevin.
Pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Have a good
No
day.
worries. Take care.
Have a good day.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you again.
Bye.